Hi everybody, good evening. Great to see you. I assume it's storming up there. It's been storming here all day. I was down with the Benicia saga yesterday afternoon, and it was like idyllic weather. It was unbelievable. I left here, it was raining, got there, and it was just gorgeous. So, just like 80 miles in California, and you're in a completely different weather pattern. So tonight after the sitting, I'm going to be giving a short discussion, a short talk, and then hopefully we'll have a discussion about the momentum in practice. And there's a stage in practice, which I think many of you, if not most of you, are familiar with, where your practice has matured to the point where you really feel that the Dharma itself is moving you forward, that it's no longer just your individual effort, but that something has happened. All the seeds that you've been planting actually are starting to root and produce some results. And so I want to talk about several key issues that, if we're clear about them, really help that. And if we're not clear about them, it's just the result. You can have a feeling that you're kind of stalled or confused or not moving forward, and you don't really realize why. So hopefully you'll find that an interesting discussion. So we're going to sit here for about a half hour, and then I have a filter on my YouTube that drowns out the bell for some reason. So when we get to the end of the meditation, I'll just bring us out of the meditation with my voice, and I'll do just a little bit of guiding at the beginning. So those of you who have sat with me before know that I like to stress what happens at the beginning, a bit about this in the talk that follows the sitting. But this initial part, for many people, seems just to be preliminary to, I guess, to get to the good stuff. And this preliminary stage where we're collecting our energy, we're moving the energy from the day we've been in an exterior way of relating to events and actually ourselves, to moving inward to a more nonverbal, nonlinear, sensory, energetic experience. So the experience that we're about to enter into, if we set things up right, is really quite a different experience than most of our daily life. So to do that, we not only need to, it's important to release a lot of the energy that's in the body from the day and find a comfortable position. But more importantly than that is to allow the mind and the body, and the heart, the energy in these three places, to slowly settle, to collect and become stable. And this gives us a sense of calmness and stability, which is the foundation for then doing the kind of experiential, fully experiencing events, exploring them, having insight, understanding, discovery. So if we don't spend sufficient time allowing the mind and the heart and the body to settle and collect and stabilize, if we try to move to this more sophisticated form of awareness, it's very difficult because our mind isn't ready to be patient and open and willing and not be distracted. So the time that we spend setting up our body and the energy in our mind and our body and our heart at the beginning here, from my perspective, is quite important. And so allowing the awareness to open to the body and experience what the attention is drawn to. Where is the awareness pulled to? So for some of us, it may be points of contact with the earth or the chair or with our body. It might be our body as a whole. It might be the feeling of the quality or the strength of energy or a mood or an emotion. So rather than doing something formulaic, allow the awareness right now just to go where it is called. See if you can, rather than directing it, just see where that goes. And then wherever that is, actually experiencing it. So it's not like we're just touching it and then moving to something else, to the breath or some method. But whether it's a point of contact or an emotion expressing itself in the body or a mood or energy in the body, actually putting the awareness inside of that experience. We're not looking at it from the outside in. We're not, quote, observing it. We're experiencing it. And there's no rush about this because this process right now of doing that will help the mind and body and heart calm and stabilize, and then set things up for the whole rest of the meditation. So when the mind loses interest in, or kind of the intensity of the first experience starts to fade, there's always a beginning, middle, and an end to all experience. Same thing. Where is the awareness called? Rather than doing something formulaic. And then really be willing and open to experience that and spend a little time with it. It doesn't require a lot of effort. It requires awareness and a willingness to be curious and to actually experience rather than observe. And so do this for as long as it as it feels to you like it's helpful. When you practice this way, you should be able to feel the energy in your body starting to stabilize and calm down and become concentrated. That's a very distinct feeling. And I feel nourished by that. I have a sense of dharmic satisfaction of the way this process works and starts to hold our body, calm our mind, hold our heart. It's really quite a beautiful thing. Um, it's not uncommon that I'll spend a third of a sitting or longer doing this, which seems preliminary to lots of people. But the step to the next level then becomes quite easy, because if you move to the breath as your anchor or the body as a whole, there's this settledness that allows awareness to make that move, and then starting to expand the scope and depth of awareness. And during the sitting, just in the back of your mind, this is an invitation. Just hold kind of an open question about the degree to which the level, the dimension of knowing that is taking place while you're meditating. Is there a knowing quality so that when you have an experience and that experience slowly morphs into another one, are you knowing that? This isn't a cognitive knowing. It's a physical, visceral, energetic, sensory experience in the body. And just notice, not making any judgments or trying to make something happen that's not usually there, but just reflecting, watching whether there is this knowing quality, and if there is, how bright it is, how much clarity is involved, how deep is the experience. And then we'll talk a little bit about that in the second hour. So I will just leave you to the process now. So we have a little bit of time left in this meditation. And what I'd like to do is not break your meditation, stay in the meditation. If you have your eyes closed, continue to do that, but allow your awareness to open up a little bit into the body and just check in with your alertness. You want to be alert and with the comfort of your body. You need to adjust your posture to be a little more comfortable. Please do that. And then I'd like to just do a reflection, a meditation, an intention setting. The last year, and particularly the last couple of months, I think for everyone, has been stressful and trying and um, chaotic. We're all in that together. And tonight we have a number of people in the Dharma hall and maybe 20 people online. And yeah, we all seem to look like we're different. Um, we all have different personalities. But right behind that, right behind the difference in our physical appearance and our personalities, um, everyone online, everyone in the Dharma hall has and may be suffering. They have challenges in their life. Um, they've had hopes and dreams that uh, didn't happen the way they wanted them to. They have people in their life that they care for deeply, that they love. Um, every single one of us, despite the surface appearances and the difference in personality, have suffered real injuries of one kind or another in our life. And all of us have come here to be together. Uh, we're here because of an intention to uh, try to become more skillful and to realize that there is a place behind our personalities and our physical differences where we are deeply the same, that there is a being that wants to have peace and satisfaction in their life. Different traditions call this different things, whether you want to call it a Buddha nature or true essence or the true self or many other names that people use because of their cultural conditioning. There is a place inside of each of us that is already whole and healthy and is filled with the possibilities of emptiness. And even if we don't believe that that's true or we've forgotten that it's there, it's waiting for us to be touched and to be cultivated with this practice. And so this evening, I invite you to hold an intention for yourself and for everyone else in the Dharma Hall and online uh, to try to relate to each other at that part of us. And to support our common aspiration and to hold ourselves and hold each other with some um, real kindness and care and compassion, and see if together we can create the environment that allows all of us to have an experience tonight, to hear something, to recognize something that helps us move forward in our journey. So this really is something that we do together. We actually can't do this by ourselves. It seems like so much of this practice is done in isolation, but that's really done in isolation to develop skills and qualities of heart that we can then bring with us when we're together and support each other and care for each other. Okay, so if you can just allow your awareness now to begin uh, slowly moving out into the body as a whole, and feeling the body sitting on a chair or a couch or bench or on the floor, a cushion, and slowly opening your eyes and just taking the time to do it slowly so that you start with seeing uh, shapes and forms, and then colors and images, and then slowly orienting yourself in the room and orienting your body in the room. And then here we are back together again. So we will break for just about 5 minutes. It'll be a quick break so we can come back and kind of dig in and have something close to an hour. So try to be brief in whatever you're going to do, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. This is always, I always consider it a treat to to be with you guys. Mountain Stream, you just have such a beautiful practice and a wonderful teacher and staff there. So it's a real gift to be able to try to make a contribution to be with you. So tonight, I'd like to talk about momentum and practice, and I'm going to give a little different talk than I had planned on giving. I think the talk that I had planned on giving, I'm going to give next time. So the talk I'm going to give tonight, and the reason it's different, is that I've had a series of encounters that I found really interesting, and basically with two different sanghas, my sangha, which is Sacramento Insight Meditation, and another one. And with Sacramento Insight, I'm starting a 3-month course in January on experiencing insight, just kind of a deep dive into looking at process and the different kinds of insight and how they relate to Buddhist psychology and teachings. And then I did a 1 day with another sangha. And in both instances, with my sangha, as part of the preparation for the course, there's a whole series of things. But one of them was I asked people to answer a series of questions in writing about their actual meditation process, step by step. And then in a 1 day, we did a lot of people actually reporting in this way. And uh, it, so my experience is that I've long time had a belief as a community level teacher that um, people will have an idea, a model in their mind of how they are practicing, and then when they actually look at what they're actually doing, that there's a difference between the idea that they have and what they are doing. So it's my experience is it's quite common for someone to come in, when I'll work with them individually, and I'll usually start off by saying, well, tell me about your meditation practice, and they'll start with giving me a Dharma book or a Chat GPT description of the practice, which is fantastic. It's like, and it's my reaction is always kind of, well, gee, I should be interviewing with you. I mean, and then the next thing I do is I'll say, okay, well, let's take your last meditation and I want you to work me through it. And people will always go to, well, gee, my concentration was good, or say, no, I don't want any of that. What I want to know is, were you sitting on a cushion or a bench or a chair? Okay, so tell me what happened. And then, like, step by step, I sat down. This is the next thing that happened. This is what I normally do. This is the kinds of experiences that I was having. And so, what came out of both of these is, in some cases, I think that there people have some confusion about method and about purpose of method. And I think you have to be a good student of that to have a good practice and to move forward. And you have to be confident that you understand that and know that. And so I think in some cases there's a little confusion. In other cases, I think it's quite common for, and we do this in all parts of our life, is that we get really comfortable. And so the degree of our clarity and the precision of what we're doing backs off a little bit, maybe gets a little sloppy. Um, so my talk tonight is about things that all of us have heard. I mean, all of this is going to sound familiar. And what I would like to say, what I would like to encourage you, how I'd like to encourage you to listen, is that I'm talking about things that we already know about, but I am trying to make clarifications and give an emphasis that is different than maybe I have in the past, and it may be different for you. So, like when I present tonight, be asking yourself, well, is this my experience? What he's describing, or do I have a different experience? What is that experience, and is there a different emphasis or something new here for me to consider? So none of this is right or wrong. It's just exploring the Dharma and exploring process and trying to move forward. Okay. So I want to start with something that I think is real fun, but it really takes this to the issue of the most practical aspect of the Dharma. So I'm going to read a quotation here. I'll tell you where this quotation came from later, uh, after I talk about it, and we'll talk about it later. And I'm sorry we like couldn't hand this out in advance so you could think about it. So the question that I'm going to ask is, what does this quotation have to do with practice? Okay, and it's not a theoretical question. I'm actually asking that. So if you have a thought or a comment, um, you can contribute it. So here's the quote. The first thing that you have to remember is the thought-feeling connection. You have a thought, it creates a feeling, you lose the thought, and you're left with the feeling. So you'll be going along, and all of a sudden, you'll be happy and you won't know why. Or you'll have this wave of depression and you won't know why. Okay, so I'm going to read that again. The thing you have to remember is the thought feeling connection. You have a thought, it creates a feeling. You lose the thought, you're still left with the feeling. So you'll be going along, and all of a sudden, you'll be happy and you won't know why. Or you'll have this wave of depression and you won't know why. Okay. So that's the quote. And am I right that this is a common experience? Yes. It's always dangerous as a teacher to ask that question, People go, no, I don't think so. That's your experience. So I think this is like a very, very common experience and a fascinating experience that we're happy and we don't know why, we're depressed and we don't know why. And so does anyone have a thought of what this quotation has to do with practice? You can jump in if you do. Just I'm being overwhelmed with the number of hands I see.
Hey,
Yes,
Dennis.
Priscilla.
Dennis, this is Randall.
Yeah, Randall.
Nice to see you. Hello, Sangha. I was just reflecting on your question and my own experience, specifically around the sitting practice itself, since that's where you started the talk. And, as I've practiced over the years, I've become more aware of how the mind and thought specifically, how feeling in a felt sense follows the mind. And I've noticed as I've gotten more still in sitting over the last few years, with much greater nuance and subtlety of watching the movement of mind, seeing how quickly a thought can actually create a somatic experience. And
Yeah,
see the
absolutely.
connection, and using labeling has been helpful for me as a tracking, a process standpoint. But specifically to your question, the real recognition of how powerful the mind is in creating our felt sense and emotional state. That connection.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, like the mind-body connection is extraordinary. Like right now, I won't do this because I don't want people to get aroused. But given the last year that we've lived through and everything politically, regardless of what side of the issues you're on, right now, I could select like 6 words and say those words, and nearly everybody on the screen or in the Dharma hall would be triggered, would be upset. I could mention a name, I could mention an issue, and all it takes is a single thought, the right thought, and your blood pressure changes, your respiration changes. I mean, it's extraordinary. And so here, this quotation is about, well, you've actually had a thought, and the thought's not there, and you're still aroused, and you don't know why. Okay. So any other thoughts about that? Did you have a comment, Priscilla? Turn your mic on.
I may just be a little bit, off from what you're talking about. But what struck me about it was, and I don't know whether you meant it to be this way or not, but it feels too sequential to me. I think that there's so much going on in the body, and it doesn't seem to be. I mean, this is a real reality. There's no doubt about it. I just feel that there's a lot more going on. I mean, if I sit down and I don't feel, if I have an ache in my body or something, and so I have this, there's there's, in other words, the feeling is coming first, or the sensory experience is coming first. It's not always thought, feeling, loss of thought, feeling. I mean, I think that that's very much what happens in a very settled place, but often um, it's a lot more kind of complicated than that. That's kind of what I get the feeling to say. And I don't know whether this is just the beginning of something you're bringing into, but I just was struck with, oh, it seems like it's a lot more going on, and I don't know whether I'm really off the mark, in terms of what you're, trying to develop.
Okay, so thank you. So I would agree that this can be very complex, and it can be really simple. That's the extraordinary thing about our physical and emotional life. And here, this is a starting place. I'm not using this quotation as some kind of illustration of that all feelings come from thoughts. I'm not doing that. I'm using a starting place for a discussion. Okay. So I'll jump right to why I use this, and then I'll tell you where it's from. The reason I use this is I find this fascinating because it says you have a thought, it creates a feeling, you lose the thought, and you're left with the feeling. So you'll be going along and all of a sudden you're happy and you don't know why, or you're sad and you don't know why. And my belief is that all of us have had this. And for me, what this is about is about mindfulness. Is that if we are not aware, the reason that we wake up and we're happy or we're sad or we're anxious and we don't know why, is that we have not been aware of what preceded it. And the most fundamental aspect of practice is to see experience as it arises, as it changes, and as it ends. So if we're not seeing the causes of states of mind that arise, what are we left with? We're left with the symptoms. We're left with the emotion. And so if we're not consciously developing our awareness to see the conditions that lead to a state of mind arising, what we are left with are the conditions. So we're always dealing with sadness, anxiety, depression, whatever our favorite dysfunctional state of mind is, and being confused about why we're not making any progress. And the reason we're not making any progress is we're not seeing it when it arises. And if we can't see it when it arises, we can't fully understand it from a Buddhist perspective. So I like to quote U Tejaniya a lot, because I think that he's able to say things very clearly. And here's one of his quotations exactly about this. He says, as your practice matures, you're able to handle difficult situations because you understand the conditions that cause them. Understanding the conditions that cause difficult situations and states of mind to arise enables you to work on the cause rather than just the symptom. So this is really the starting place for Buddhist practice. In the end, what we're trying to do, I think the first principle is that you don't speak, you don't act, you don't initiate a train of thinking, if you're being skillful, until you understand what the conditions are that are causing the difficulty, the state of mind, the emotion to arise. And if you do, then you're launching without understanding the causes of it. And anything that you can do is going to be less than skillful, less than optimal. So I want to do clarifications on a number of very simple things. As I said, we've heard all of these, but so some of this will be old news to some of you, and for others, I'm hoping that it will be helpful clarification. So I want to start with just the basic meditation process of insight meditation or vipassana. And it has two components. The first one, generally speaking, is called concentration. And the purpose of concentration practice is to collect, settle, and stabilize our energy so that the mind and the body is collected, settled, and stable. And it's the first step in practice. And it's the thing that I think attracts so many people to practice in the beginning, because when you do this, and you can learn how to do this relatively quickly, it's enormously comforting. It allows you to soothe yourself. It allows you in stressful situations to create some kind of base or stability to help manage and work with the experience. So, and then it relates to the second step, which I'll talk about in a second, but that's the most fundamental purpose of the first step, which is concentration. So the two clarifications I want to make is that this is extremely comfortable, and people will sit down and you'll focus on your breath, and you'll lock on to the in-breath and the out-breath. All of the energy starts to stabilize, and then people will find that their mind gets sluggish or sleepy, or they get lost in thought, or they get lost in sensory experience. And this form of meditation is not just sensory awareness. It's something more than that. And the reason this happens is that the mind is not knowing what is being experienced. So one of the key components of concentration practice is the mind knowing the experience that is taking place. So in the Anapanasati Sutta, the sutta on the foundations of the breath, the Buddha says, breathing in, the yogi knows that they are breathing in, breathing out. They know that they are breathing out. They know that it's a long breath. They know that it's a short breath. There's a whole series of things, but there's a knowing quality to it. And the reason the knowing quality is so important is that if the mind wants to know, there's interest and curiosity, which keeps the mind awake, and it supports the investigation and exploration, which is the second part of the meditation process. So even if all you're doing is a stabilizing concentration practice to calm yourself, to stabilize yourself, it's still a practice that involves knowing, experientially knowing. And the second clarification is that concentration practice is not designed to generate insight. So when we talk about vipassana or insight meditation, that is not concentration practice. Insight will happen, but it will be random, and it is secondary to the purpose, which is to settle, collect, and stabilize. So the second element is the insight practice or vipassana practice, which uses the concentration practice as the foundation. So that whole piece that I went through, and I do it frequently at the beginning of the meditation about taking your time to really go into the body, to stabilize it, to allow it to collect. That is critical to the next step, the insight practice, which is fundamentally to fully experience, not observe, but to fully experience, to explore, and as a result of that, to have spontaneous discovery, insight, understanding, doesn't matter what you call it, by being fully in the experience and then exploring it. This spontaneous recognition appears to see into the nature of things. So we can see how conditions lead to states of mind, how states of mind arise, how they change, how they end. And if we know that, then we can work with them. If we don't know that, what we're trying to do is control them or manage them. And this practice is much more than that. So the two clarifications that I wanted to make is, first of all, is that the concentration piece is essential. Insight vipassana practice is dependent on the mind being settled and collected and calm, because if it's not, it can't see clearly. So that whole first part isn't just to like, well, let's find a position and be comfortable. It's not about just that being comfortable. It's actually about creating this foundation that allows the mind to see more clearly, so it can then begin to experience more deeply and explore. And the second piece is that this element of the practice, like the first one, is dependent on knowing. But the knowing in this one is much more expansive. You know, we're opening up to the very nature of practice, relationships, patterns of conduct. You know, there's a whole series of important insights that can take place. So the distinguishing these two, the concentration is about calming and stabilizing. Insight is about exploring and discovering. And the implication of that is that insight practice, the exploration and discovery by design, is challenging our suffering. It's stretching us beyond our self-imposed boundaries and limitations. It's asking us to open to and go into territory that normally we don't want to go outside of our conventional view of ourselves. So there is an inherent tension in the process of the Vipassana practice. That's not necessarily the case with concentration, because you're primarily settling, collecting, and stabilizing the mind and the body. So we should expect that we're going to feel challenged and have tension and feel like we're stretching ourselves and be uncertain and confused and find things ambiguous if we are actually exploring. That's where the discovery comes from. But if we're not feeling that way, it tends to be an indication that we're not doing exploration and discovering. What we're doing is primarily collecting the mind and being comfortable during meditation. So these fundamentals, as I said, many of you will, this is old news for some of you. I'm hoping that this kind of creates a fine tuning, and that all of us can, I do, I think it's very important. I keep trying to revisit the basics of my practice and ask myself if these things are actually happening as part of being a good student. Okay, second thing that I want to address is what knowing means. And we have all heard many, many times that this is, in quotes, a body-based practice. So I'd like to present this in a slightly different way. I did a little bit of it in the guiding to really emphasize a point, because our thinking mind is so powerful and tends to dominate, and it's easy to develop a cognitive model of what we're doing in meditation and then actually imposing that model on our experience, as opposed to having a conceptual model and then testing it and seeing what is true and not true while we're sitting in meditation. So I always like the quotation from Ramakrishna where he said, thinking is a good servant, but a poor master. So as a starting place, the Vipassana process, the fully experiencing, exploring, is not a cognitive process. It's not thinking. It's not figuring out. It's not psychotherapy. It has nothing to do with our story. And the role of thinking in meditation is to understand the teachings, the psychology, and the model, but then to experientially test that and have an experiential model, not to think about it while we're on the cushion or while we're meditating. So the major point I want to make is that the experience that we're talking about, this knowing that is, quote, body-based, is actually a physical, tangible, visceral experience. It is experience at the sensory and the energetic levels. This is what we mean by what we call direct experience. So it's, and I think actually this is a form of physical experience and knowing that we are unfamiliar with in the West. We live in a very disembodied way. And this is really talking about an experience that is intimate, it's fluid, it's non-linear, it's frequently uncertain and ambiguous. The historical Buddha used language that the first time I heard it really struck me. And in referring to the Brahma Viharas, these what are referred to as the higher emotions in Buddhist practice, which would be loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And based on my practice, I also believe that it applies to like forgiveness, generosity, gratitude. But he said that you should practice this and do it repetitively and explore it and fully experience so that it saturates our body and our mind. And another phrase that frequently turns up in the suttas is the Buddha talking about penetrating into experience. And this is important to me because if you study the suttas, you see that the historical Buddha was not the kind of guy who used many adjectives. There's almost very few adjectives. So for him to use language, assuming that the translation is anywhere close to the intention, that we're supposed to saturate ourselves and to penetrate. This isn't an experience. You can't penetrate something by watching it from up here down there or just observing it. You can't saturate yourself by repeating some phrases that are out there. This is a full body experience. And so when we talk about interconnection or interrelationship and interbeing, Thich Nhat Hanh would always talk about interbeing. These are all efforts to try to capture the idea of how experience is so interdependent and that what we're trying to experience is not conceptual. We end up using language to describe it, but it is not conceptual. It's coming from deeply from the inside out, the inherent intelligence and wisdom and sensitivity of the body. And so it's coming inside out, and we're experiencing at a sensory and energetic level. So this is a real question of developing the skill, in my opinion, in my experience. The other thing I'd like to say about this, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of discussion, is that the idea of knowing something experientially is not a concept, but it's an embodied experience. And it starts knowing, being fully experiencing, exploring, and then as a result of that, having recognitions, understanding, insights, discovery, starts with not knowing. What the mind tends to do, and just think about the last meditation that you had, my guess is that the majority of us sat down and somewhere in the back of the mind, you're not saying, my gosh, I wonder what's going to happen during this meditation. I mean, like, I'm so curious. And the assumption is that, well, I meditate, I know what meditation is, I meditate regularly, and I'm going to have that experience, which may end up being true. But holding our experience with that state of mind automatically cuts off curiosity and interest and the way the mind is framing the experience. The mind is not framing the experience of, like, this could be, something could happen. I could have a significant insight in this setting. Now, if it's framed that way, suddenly the framing itself, there's a willingness, there's an openness, the energy comes up, the possibility of the unexpected is there, the possibility of freshness and curiosity and spontaneity. But if we don't enter with that intention, then all kinds of possibilities are automatically cut off by not having that intention. So another way to think of this is that the problem is an attachment to knowing. That our mind is constantly, it's a valuable function in the real world, that the mind is constantly filling in blanks of where we don't know something. It's making assumptions, it's making projections, all kinds of things. and that creates a sense of stability and continuity, and I know what's going on, so I have a sense of safety. That same state of mind, when it's applied to our meditation process, actually is a problem. So actually seeing that that's a problem and setting an intention before the meditation, during the meditation, and after it's over, reflecting on, was I able to actually bring this idea of not knowing, don't know mind, beginner's mind, whatever you want to call it, but I don't know what's happening next. I have a little thing in my kitchen that I see every morning that is an effort to remind me of this idea that there is the possibility of this unexpected freshness, openness in life. But we have to have the intention to have that. And it's just a little card and it says, today could be the day. So, some of you know that 18 months, 2 years ago, I fell and broke my back in 8 places. So, it means that, like, you just don't know. Change is perpetual. I mean, today could be the day where something happens that, my mind doesn't want it to happen and it could change my life. It also means, like, today could be the day that I meet someone that I've never met before and they know exactly who I am, that they're relating to me not as the personality, but what's behind the personality. And immediately we feel that connection. So, to the degree that we can see that we're attached to knowing and start to give that up, it's a long process. We start to experience deeper and increasing levels of nuance and sensitivity, and this becomes physically intimate, and there's a sense of aliveness to it. So it's potentially really exciting and creates a whole new momentum for practice. So I think I'm going to stop there. This is, I guess, about half of the talk I was planning on giving, but I, I think this is probably a good place to stop. So I want to open it up. I think, let's see, we've got a little bit of time for questions and comments. I'd be interested to anything that reflections that you have.
Hi, Dennis. This is Robin. I just wanted to let you know that Jenna's going to pass around the mic to ask questions. We can see her a little bit. And then if you're on Zoom, just go ahead and raise your reaction hand so we can call on you over here and we can switch back and forth.
We have a question in the hall.
Hi, Dennis. This is Douglas.
Good evening, Douglas.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. You touched on some things that that I was reading about this morning. One of the things about concentration, what I read was that when you come into a room, you turn on the light switch. But once you've turned on the light switch, you don't keep on turning it on. That's the thing about concentration. It's to lead you into another part of the experience of meditation after you've done concentration, after you've turned on the light switch. It also went into that the idea of, like, say in your meditation, in my meditation, I'm experiencing stillness, and stillness I'll define as like the absence of reactivity to thinking. And so at times I can think that, oh, this is my idea of stillness. And it's not stillness at all. It's just my idea of stillness.
That's right.
And I believe I'm using this as kind of an example to try and like integrate what you're talking about. Really bodily knowing. Like really knowing an experience rather than just thinking you know an experience.
Do you want me to comment on that?
Yeah. If you have any
Okay.
go
So
further
first
in
of all,
depth
on
with
the light switch example, which I think is helpful, you hear that a lot, but I actually would say there's an addition to that, because what happens is that if we don't have a very strong intention to keep our mind focused on an experience and the mind wanders and we're bringing it back, if that gets weak, the concentration that starts to go down, and then we move into sluggishness and what have you. So we have to be in any given meditation, unless you're just completely on your game, you're multiple times. If the mind's awake, you're going to recognize that your energy has gone down, and the quality or the depth or the intensity, however you want to describe it, of your concentration, of that focus, has dropped below the level to keep you present and knowing. So I actually don't think it's as simple as like just turning on the light. Maybe if we say that it's a light switch with a dimmer, that the light will start to get dimmer, and we have to bring our energy back up, connect with our intention, make that light get brighter again. I'm sure all of us have a sense of that in our practice. You're absolutely right that the minute that you're commenting on, describing or making a story about an experience during meditation, you're no longer in the experience. You're no longer describing the experience that you're having. That experience is already over. You're attempting to think about something that has happened in the past. So the reason that we do, like some of the basic practices, and there are also insights. One of them are the qualities of experience. So, where an experience is in your body, does it have change and movement in it? Does the energy, does it express itself in temperature? Does it trigger some other sensory reaction? Does it morph into something else? The reason that we do those basic things is that they lead to us spontaneously understanding the experience. Like if we just throw a note on something that changes and we say, well, change or heat or energy, I mean, that's helpful. There's a knowing at that level, but the deeper level of like, well, what actually is anger? And anger is a set of things that happens in the body and physically in the mind. And so the only way that we can understand those in a really deep way is being willing to have anger there and not try to suppress it or apply an antidote to it, but actually go into it, so that I know when I have this configuration of experiences, what that is. Now, I may end up putting, just because we're stuck with language, I'll put a word on it. But the knowing is this whole configuration of things that are happening. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, really just opening up to what is being experienced.
Yes, in a physical, sensory, energetic level,
Right.
non
Not a
conceptual,
mental
nonlinear.
imposition.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I think maybe one more, and then I need to turn it over to the crew.
One more question from the hall.
Okay.
Hey, Dennis, this is great. Marcia here.
Well, good evening.
Good evening. So I'm kind of forming the question as I'm talking to you, so I'm not quite sure how it's going to come out, but it has to do with the process. Like in my experience, in meditation, oftentimes something happens spontaneously that I'm aware of. There's an insight that occurs. And it's it seems like in reflection afterwards that the pieces come together. And in the moment that it's happening, I'm aware, but I haven't processed it, or there's something else that happens, and I'm calling it reflection, like afterward, that puts it together. So I'm just curious if that sounds like, what is that? What is happening there?
Well, this is, I would, Priscilla was talking about how things it can be complex. So the way that knowing turns into insight can happen, in my experience, in a number of different ways. So it's not like there's insight and it happens only in one way. So a couple of illustrations. One way is that you actually have these moments in meditation and in daily life. I think this is a thing that is de-emphasized, but if we're practicing well, we can have like quite dramatic, important insights in daily life. Joseph Goldstein stresses this. And so you'll have in the moment an insight, and it's just crystal clear, like boom. And you know it to be true, and you may think about it later, but the knowing and the core of what happened is not up for grabs. It's not something you're going to think about later and going to change. This is one of the characteristics of insight, is that the clarity of it is so powerful because it's connected to this direct experience. So that's one thing that happens. Another thing that happens in my experience is you will have a moment where it's quite clear. I mean, you'll actually see something, and that may be a pattern that you've never seen before, or a relationship between an experience and an emotion, and a pattern that you've never seen before, and you see it and it's clear, but it's only later that the implications of that start to expressing themselves, which is partially cognitive. You've suddenly realized something about yourself or about the nature of experience or the world that either you had not seen before, or that you're seeing it from a different perspective. So then the inherent wisdom in the body has presented that to you, and then afterwards your mind is reflecting on it, and it's also thinking about it and encountering situations and actually seeing that in situations in real life. So all of that is happening. So your description of like reflecting and then putting it together later, to me, makes complete sense. And, it's interesting because it's going to potentially happen a little bit different for different people. Some people are like very visual, and they'll have an experience and then afterwards have imagery, presenting itself, as opposed to uh, just cognitively realizing implications. Some people are much more bodily sensitive, and something will happen that way. We had a 2-day retreat, and it was by accident that we had it 10 days after the election, and it was serendipity. There were 4 quadrants, 2 days: forgiveness, loving kindness, um, gratitude, and equanimity. It was fantastic. I mean, the community really came together, and I was responsible for the forgiveness part, and I spent a lot of time working on it, and then it just really bumped up my forgiveness practice. And I've had a whole series of things just going on for the last 2 weeks since that retreat. I mean, just these bodily things keep presenting themselves to me. It's been very rich. So an insight that, if it's really powerful, can like open a door, and then it just keeps presenting itself to you of material to work with. So, okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Time here. I'd like to really thank everyone for attending tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to sit with you, and my hope is that our common intention and the merit of all of our effort tonight in some real way helps to eliminate suffering in the world and create some kindness and happiness for so many people right now who are suffering. So thank you.